Welcome. Welcome to Yoga Church. Welcome to a time to rest in the non-dual teachings. Non-duality is where we begin to understand the oneness behind everything, the wholeness behind everything, the divinity behind everything. And then it comes out more into our life as this happens. We call this a subtractive process. We don't add on to get to it. We investigate misunderstandings. We investigate our true nature. And then there's an uncovering that happens. We call it a subtractive process. It's removing what blocks the true reality. We're going to look into this really nicely today, looking at the nature of thoughts. When I say misunderstandings, we keep saying misunderstandings, these are all thoughts. So we're going to look more into the nature of thoughts and understand thoughts, understand how to recognize thoughts, understand the power of thoughts. Excited to share that today. And non-duality or Advaita Vedanta, it's jhana yoga, which is yoga of knowledge. And so there's a understanding that happens, but to be clear, it's a non-conceptual understanding. It's a directly experienced understanding. So again, when concepts come in, they're just pointers. When I say there's a Buddha right here, you don't use that thought and think, oh, there's a Buddha there. You check to see that there's a Buddha there. Then you know there's a Buddha there. And that's what we're doing. So, and then we drop the pointer to there's a Buddha there. You don't need the pointer anymore. So the pointers aren't to be held on to. They're just to check. Check internally and know directly what is real for yourself. Also, I wanted to point out that non-dual teachings, I think, are really good for the Western mind. Many times, what happens in a spiritual path is people were maybe brought up under a religion and they were told they had to believe something. And then they're realizing that their happiness isn't actually coming from that. They're not actually getting that happiness, and maybe the beliefs don't feel right to them that they're being taught. But in non-duality, we're not interested in the beliefs. So again, we're directly investigating what is real. There's no importance given to the belief at all. There's a pointer, it's only a pointer, it can be dropped. It's not important. So for the Western mind that maybe isn't comfortable believing in so many different things, wanting to know what is real and what is true, it's like the scientific method, looking into it, investigating. The really nice thing here is we don't need some fancy scientific instruments to do this. This wholeness that is behind and permeating everything, it's also permeating you. And you might even discover that it actually is you. No fancy scientific instrument needed. We just realize it again directly. Non-duality. Welcome. Mhm. Again, we're going to investigate thoughts more deeply today. And as we've said before, there's an importance in paying attention to awareness, to the nature of awareness. This is an investigation that can be happening day to day, moment to moment. This hand is the awareness, so representing that there's always this awareness here. Sometimes we'll call it that impersonal, non-local, delocalized, can't find its location, ever present, witnessing presence. So we continue to investigate and look into that. And like I've said before, when we're resting more in that, one thing that happens is we start to recognize thoughts more, and we recognize the thoughts appear, and we recognize them disappear. So thoughts come and go inside awareness. Before we might have intermingled these things, we might have thought that awareness was a thought. We're seeing that thoughts rise and fall inside of the awareness. Definitely not the same thing. The mind is not aware. There's awareness, and there's awareness of thoughts, which is awareness of the mind. So we start to become more aware of thoughts. And again, when we talk about the misunderstandings that are veiling this wholeness that is here, those are thoughts. And the thought can be a label. So I've labeled something, good or bad, square, separate. They're all labels. They're constantly happening. But they can become less and less. Something that happens in this teaching is that it becomes less and less. The labeling can happen when it's necessary, but because there's so much unnecessary labeling that has fallen away, our mind can actually act very clearly and function really well. But recognizing that labeling, that judging happens, any concept, any belief, those are all thoughts. And we're looking beyond the thoughts. So we're discovering what's beyond the thoughts. Wanted to take a moment to talk about how thoughts will actually constrict. Before the thoughts happen, there's just wholeness. And then a labeling happens, and the consciousness and the awareness goes into that labeling, starts combining itself with that. Identity starts forming around that. There's a constricting that happens when thoughts happen. We see life a certain way, good or bad. There's a constricting. I've labeled it that. Instead of being in this wholeness, that constricting has happened. And it's okay for thoughts to happen. What happens eventually is the thoughts happen, and it's okay for that to happen, but there's this wholeness that's behind that. So all of it's happening, the constricting and the opening up, is all happening within consciousness. But before we're resting more in that space, then we're completely becoming identified with these thoughts. And they're taking over our lives, and they're directing our lives. We're seeing how to I open up more, and what happens is there's also a loosening. So a loosening, I'm not going to take that thought as seriously. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe that thought is the way it is. Maybe it's not the way it is. But there's a loosening that can happen here at the very least. And then eventually there can be like a full dissolving of what that thought was constricting a life into. Thoughts are very powerful. Beliefs are very powerful. So belief is, it's a thought that's really been deeply ingrained. You could even call it like an unconscious thought at that point. So it becomes a belief. These are the misunderstandings. So being able to recognize that something is a thought is very powerful. Very liberating. Just that. And anybody can do it. So anybody can notice that awareness is there, that they are aware of sounds, and they're aware of thoughts, they're aware of what is seen, that it's one awareness. It's not a awareness of thoughts awareness and awareness of sounds awareness, but it's one awareness behind everything, always present in the waking state, in the dream state. It's that same awareness that's always there throughout everything. And then we're seeing these thoughts here in that. So I recently, actually just this week, came across this psychology term called cognitive fusion. Term in psychology called cognitive fusion. And I wanted to share with you a little bit of what this means. So in the psychology world, they've realized that this can be a problem. And it's absolutely non-dual. Absolutely non-dual. So cognitive fusion, it's about getting tied up in our thoughts. And they say you become entangled with your thoughts. You treat them as literal, objective facts, rather than as mere mental events. So non-duality, a thought arises and a thought falls away. Not going to get attached to it, but this happens naturally that we get attached to it. And what we're learning here to do is not get tied up in that thought. In this area of psychology, they say that this cognitive fusion, it allows thoughts or negative beliefs to dictate your actions. So they're recognizing this in psychology. This is dictating our actions. We equate thoughts with reality, they say, believing our thoughts are 100% true. So this is a thing. Has anybody done that? So, this is a thing. We think our thoughts are 100% true. It says, such as treating the thought, I am unlovable, as a literal fact instead of just a feeling. Right? So we say, I am unlovable. And then that becomes our truth. And then is that going to affect how we live our lives? But what if we realized that's just a thought? So transformative. They're saying in this field of psychology, there's a loss of present awareness. We get caught up in the internal narrative of language and memory, and we lose touch with the physical world. Absolutely a non-dual teaching. wonder if the people were aware of non-duality that came up with this. It says it creates behavioral control, allowing thoughts and fears like, I'll fail if I try this. That's a thought. I will fail if I try this is a thought. Does it have power? It has enormous power, right? It'll stop us from trying things. It dictates our actions or avoidance, the non-action, keeps us stuck in unhelpful patterns. So beautiful, so non-dual. Cognitive fusion, this psychological term, and how they're working with this and trying to help people have better lives. It's wonderful. Cognitive fusion. In non-duality, we talk about it as we identify with the thoughts. Because there's so much, we realize the power of identity and how the belief around our identity is so limiting. So I am unlovable is an identity thought. I will fail at this is an identity thought. We in non-duality might even point more even to the I, which is the I that feels it is unlovable, which is the I that feels it will fail at this. We can even go deeper, take it on as a self-inquiry. But even before that, we can recognize it as a thought. And again, there's a loosening. It loses that power. We say the more that we're resting in that space of the witnessing presence, there's this wedge that's put between who I am and the thoughts, so I'm not getting tied up in them as easily. And at first, we might still be getting tied up with them. We see less and less we're getting tied up with them, and then more and more we're just seeing it as a thought coming and going. It loses its stickiness, we can say. Instead of, there really is a stickiness to it. Like it draws us in and we get like tied up in it so easily, and then it just loses its stickiness. It loses its pull. It loses its ability to entangle. So transformative. And then also just covering up what's real. So in the teaching, we recognize the power of thoughts and beliefs, and we are freed more from those. And in that process, also, there's a quieting of the mind. So I'm not giving energy to it. The more that you give energy to it, the more that you give energy to I am unlovable, the more that it lives. But if you see it as a thought, it loses its juice more and more and falls away, and the mind becomes calmer and calmer. So the more that I see these silly thoughts that are happening, and it's okay, at some point they might have served their purpose. But if we're here contemplating non-duality, we're in a space where we want to transcend. We're in a space where life has brought us to a transcending of the grip that thoughts have on lives. And we can start to be free of that. And then the mind becoming more and more clear. So I wanted to take a moment with misunderstandings and maybe even correct understandings and just point out thought or reality. And then with this, we can keep moving into what is real. So I know that the thought isn't real, but what is real? So one of the primary misunderstandings that I regularly talk about is I am a person. Is that a thought or is that reality? Is it a concept or is that reality? For sure, that's a thought. And then I might point to, as I have today already, I am the impersonal, ever-present, witnessing presence behind life. Is that a thought or is that reality? That still is a thought, right? It's a pointer, still a thought. So we don't want to go off into life just deep down believing that we are a person. And then taking on a new belief that I am a witnessing presence. It's going to be a mess if you deep down still feel that you're a person, and then you have a new belief layered on top that I am a witnessing presence. So still realizing that's just a thought, that's just a concept, but it's still a pointer towards what's real or a pointer towards what's not real. So other ones, consciousness is in me, or awareness is in me, or awareness comes from the mind. Is that a thought or is that reality? Consciousness is in me, awareness is in me. Sure, it's a thought. I am the doer in control of my actions. I might not regularly think that, but still a thought. Happiness comes from getting what I want. Definitely a thought. Suffering comes from what I don't want coming to me. So first of all, that these things, happiness and suffering, are coming from outside. All thoughts. None of it reality. So then it can lose its grip. It can lose its grip on a life. Nice. So feel free to recognize things as thoughts. Recognize thoughts as thoughts, concepts, labels, judgments, beliefs. We'll continue looking into this. I wanted to share a prayer. This is an ancient prayer, thousands of years ago, 6th to 7th century BCE, from one of the Upanishads, ancient spiritual texts of India. And the prayer says, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Then we'll translate that. Om, being that representative of the vibration of truth throughout the universe. Just a fundamentally, it's the start of many prayers. Om. Asatoma Sadgamaya. It says, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from the untruth to the truth. Lead me from the misunderstandings what is real. So the very start of the prayer, this ancient prayer, thousands of years old, lead me from the unreal to the real, realizing this. I want to share more about what real means in this teaching, because there's a reality that we might think of in the West that like this body is real. And of course, in a way it is real. You see me just qualify it there a little bit. The floor is real, the room is real. Thoughts are real, they happen. But what we talk about, what was realized centuries ago, millennia ago, and what continues to be understood, and then there's a power behind this, is the eternal versus the rising and falling appearances. And what is real is this eternal. And then the appearances are appearances, it's fine. But this is what we get tied up in. We get tied up in the appearances. We get tied up in the thoughts. We get tied up in the appearances, myself and the other. And what the pointer is towards what is beyond that. This is that wholeness that's beyond that. And as you continue to investigate awareness, you'll see its unchanging nature, untouched by life, ever present. So it's bringing out this non-dual reality. So lead me from the unreal, lead me from just the appearances to what is ever present. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya. From the unreal to the real. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. That is lead me from darkness to light. So it's not dark in this room right now. What's dark? The darkness is like the veiling. So there's this veiling that has happened. There is some sort of a darkness. And then when those veils are removed and reality is shining forth, and we talk about that ever-present awareness is like that sun, that it's self-luminous. Nothing brings it to life. It is life, ever-present. Even though it's always there, we don't pay attention to it. Maybe we're starting to pay attention to it, but before we heard the teachings, maybe we hadn't paid attention to it. The ever-present shining light. So lead me from darkness to light, the unveiling to this light that is always here. Also to Mas and Kabaya. Churma, Jyotirgamaya. Churma, Amritam Gamaya. So the last part, the fourth part, third part, Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Just make sure, yes, Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. So that is saying, lead me from death to immortality. Death to immortality. Sometimes the Buddhists will say, like, the primary fear is the fear of death. That fundamental fear is that fear of death. And what dies? The appearances die. Thoughts rise and fall. Dreams rise and fall. bodies rise and fall, but there's this ever-present awareness. So leading me from the appearances to that which is aware of the appearances. From death to immortality. And then the last part of the prayer, the fourth line, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So that Om again, that wholeness, and then Shanti, 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 meaning peace, peace, peace. Talked about that there's a deep contentment that is natural, that is inherent in a life, in all lives, in all of creation. And then again, that is covered up largely by these misunderstandings. And as those fall away, that deep contentment, that deep peace comes forth and is there present throughout everything. So as a momentary identification happens, as we take on a role in a life as a father or a mother, as a friend or a colleague, that role can happen, but there's this ever-present peace and calmness behind it all. As events come that please you, events come that don't please you, there can be this ever-present calmness behind it all. Om Shanti, 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 peace, peace, peace. The more that you see the peace coming in your life, that means the teaching is working more and more deeply in your life. It's going to be valued and honored. I wanted to share an insight that recently happened around a realization that separation is only a thought, and that separation doesn't happen until the thought happens. So if we just, even with eyes open, looking around the room that we're in, if labeling doesn't happen anywhere, there's just a wholeness. We can feel this wholeness. You might think it's something profound, but it's ever present. It's absolutely unavoidable. It's here, and it's that labeling that starts making things separate. So nice just to take a moment with that. See that before labeling happens, there's just a wholeness. Maybe thoughts are arising inside of you, and you can see that wholeness collapsing as the thoughts pop up, and as they fall back away. Just attention back on breath, being aware that we are aware. The wholeness is just there, naturally. One reality. I've talked some about the importance of asking questions in this teaching. I've always put it two different ways. The first way is that, first of all, because questions can happen because this is a very different way than how we were brought up to understand the world. So it's understandable that questions could happen. So a question happens. And then as a question happens, the question can be held within. So it's held within, meaning it's not shared. So it's just held in that inner world. Then the other way that we can take a question is maybe it's held within and it just doesn't do its thing. Then we can ask somebody about it. And so this questioning within, Ramana Maharshi is, in anyway, way before him, but definitely, so much what he would say is, to ask the question, who am I? This is called self-inquiry. It's a really big part of non-duality, this inner discovery. Even if the question gets answered from another, from a teacher or something, it still has to be, the answer has to be taken in and it has to be discovered to be real or not. So Ramana would promote self-inquiry as the main method of, liberation. So the question just inside us is very powerful. And as I'm hoping to share some understanding, I'm contemplating, how I might explain something sometimes. And the kind of the question came up: if there is a separate from me, right? So we feel that there's this world of separation. If there's a separate from me, I must have edges. I must be in space-time, right? There can't be a separate if I don't have edges. Can't be a separate if I don't exist in time and space. If I'm beyond time and space. So kind of this question and this deeper understanding of the question showed up, and then the questions came. So if I must have edges, where is my edge? And of course, there's an edge to a body-mind. But then if I'm seeing myself more and more as this awareness behind everything, that is the unchanging nature of this life. That awareness that is behind, that witnessing presence. And we've checked, where does the witnessing land? Where, when a thought is heard or when a thought is seen, is heard, there's that inner monologue. When a sound is heard, when something is seen with the eyes, where does this all land? And there's no landing place for it. It's appearing in awareness without location. When dreams are happening without location, it's locationless. There's no edge to it. So this is investigated. We can find an edge to awareness. Did it start when I wake up in the morning? Did I suddenly become aware? Was there just awareness? There was also awareness. I know there's awareness when dreaming was happening. Go all the way back, through a body's life. What's this moment that awareness happened? Or maybe there's that's all just thoughts and concepts. I can't put a place in time, location, anything with awareness. So I can't have a separate from me. So this is an example of a question coming in or arising. and then the investigation happening, and how the investigation can really dissolve that separate from me. It can dissolve that question. This is what happens lots of times. The questions dissolve, and Ramana said, when you ask the question, who am I? It wasn't necessarily to get an answer of who am I? Definitely not a conceptual answer, but it's largely to dissolve the I that I thought I was. Dissolve the I that I thought I was. Really, anyway. The grand I, just like the witnessing presence, even that can fall away. I wanted to take a moment to share, speaking of reality, take a moment to share something from Anandamayi Ma. So if you're not aware of Anandamayi Ma, I want to share what one Master Shivananda Saraswati from the 20th century, he created the Divine Life Society, the Shivananda Yoga Farm in Grass Valley, is around his teachings, and he promoted yoga, and came to the West and definitely a lot in the East a lot as well, in India. And he called Anandamayi Ma the most perfect flower the Indian soil has produced. And it's saying a lot. They know in India, innumerable sages and saints have been produced. When the missionaries came to India and shared about Jesus, they said, "Oh yes, he sounds like a great man. We have many of them here." And still some would, see him as their greatest, just like they would see others as their greatest for them. But there are innumerable, and for Shivananda Saraswati to say that of Anandamayi Ma is so powerful. And then Paramahansa Yogananda, I had a picture, I didn't, anyway, I've shared it before, and you can look up Paramahansa Yogananda with Anandamayi Ma. I love it so much. She's hanging on his shoulder. He'll stand strong and tall the way he does, and she's standing there with him. So much love. He's the one that wrote Autobiography of a Yogi. That one book that Steve Jobs had on his iPad that brought him to India. Paramahansa Yogananda, he started the Self-Realization Fellowship. Nanda Village up in Nevada City was was is around him. And when he met Anandamayi Ma, he asked her about her life. And she said, "Father," saying to Yogananda, "Father, there's little to tell." I would imagine by this time she's been seen by heads of state. She was known to be a powerful force. People would flock to her wherever she came. She was always traveling around India. He says, "Father, there is little to tell. My consciousness has never associated itself with this temporary body. Before I came on this earth, Father, I was the same. As a little girl, I was the same. I grew into womanhood, but still I was the same. When the family in which I had been born made arrangements to have this body married, I was the same. And Father, in front of you now, I am the same. Ever afterward, through the dance of creation, or though the dance of creation changes around me, in the hall of eternity, I shall be the same. This is that reality that we're talking about. This is again another one of those blessed lives that deeply knew of that reality. The real and the unreal. Yeah. So knowing that this life was unfolding, knowing that that life is unfolding, this life is unfolding. There's one reality behind it all. We talk in non-duality about this one reality, what is real. We can get sometimes, so let's say one takes on the reality, I am unlovable. Is it somebody else's reality? It's not somebody else's reality, right? So that's a reality that's held in that individual. And we can say that as many people out there are on the planet, there are that many realities. But of course, that's not reality. It's a reality for that person, but it's not the reality that we're pointing at. So we want to go beyond those individual realities to this eternal reality that Anandamayama was, by God's grace, never separated from. Ramana, as a teenager, realized the reality, and the life was given to that so quickly after the realization as a teenager, and left his family and rested in that. I have this quote here from Ramana talking about the one reality. Says to turn our attention away from the objects to the one who is aware. And again, thoughts are objects, they're appearances. So look to the awareness, that oneness, that the awareness permeate a life. I just want to take a moment to talk about doership and this belief in doership, its power. Again, it's a misunderstanding that I am the doer, and then the understanding that we can come to realize is that actions come from one's nature, and one's nature is genetics and up-to-date conditioning. So just like we check on awareness as events happen in our life and as actions come from us and actions come from another, we can recognize, instead of saying they shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have done that, or it should have been done differently, or they did it so well, I wish I did it like them. Realizing that actions are coming from one's nature. So it's a thought. All of these judgments are thoughts. And then again, that's where the mind takes ownership of the actions after the fact, that they did that I did that I should have done that. There's this thoughts, these concepts that are taking ownership, and it's because we believe that the other is in control of their actions, then it's not arising out of one's nature. So we check over and over. It's not believed here, it's checked over and over how the way one person, the way their life has brought them to this moment, they're acting that way, and the way another person, their life has brought them to their moment, to this moment, they're going to act another way. Everybody acting differently. We talk about the the appliances in the kitchen, the toaster and the refrigerator and the blender, and they're designed their specific way, and everybody's acting the specific way that they were designed. And then there's so much, the power, all this labeling that happens to all that falls away when we see that that's where the actions come from. This one Christian scientist healer from the mid-1900s in New York City, called Joel Goldsmith. He wrote The Infinite Invisible, talking about, he wasn't a non-duality teacher, but his understanding was absolutely non-dual. And he often said to give up the belief in two powers. And that meant that, God, the absolute, was behind everything. So we could say that, like, everything's happening randomly. But again, there's this understanding that the absolute is behind, there's an intelligence behind everything. And seeing that intelligence behind everything, it starts to happen more and more when we loosen this belief in doership. We see that life is taking care of life. There's this intelligence behind everything. So Joel Goldsmith saying there is, the one power, and this belief in two powers is saying that I am the doer, that they are the doer, versus realizing that there's just that one behind everything. And when this happens, predetermination just becomes a obvious conclusion that everything is happening, it's unfolding as it should naturally, with this divine force behind everything happening as it should. We've talked about how suffering comes from, the Buddha used the word dukkha, which means a resistance to the flow of life. So when I feel resistance to the flow of life, I can check to see that it's a thought. I can check to see that it's a belief in doership. And that resistance, again, can loosen, it can fall away, it can dissolve. Suffering can dissolve. Peace, deep contentment, everlasting contentment, contentment that's independent of circumstances, comes forward. This wholeness of everything coming forward. Eckhart Tolle said, resistance to the now is the root cause of all human suffering. Same thing. He loved to point to this magnificence of the present moment as the now. And he said, you can, fight it, but you will suffer. It's what's happening. And you think it's not good in the moment, there's probably some goodness in there that we just can't see, right? Lots of times we'll realize in retrospect something that felt painful in the moment, maybe even losing a job, losing a relationship. In the long run, it was beneficial, right? We can't see in the moment something that looks painful, if that's a benefit or not. Ramana would say that it takes sometimes a blow, sometimes many blows, to bring somebody even onto the spiritual path, to get them to search for truth. It doesn't take a flowery moment, right? That could happen. But lots of times it takes a blow, and we don't want to judge it. If this is brought to us by life, it's brought to us by the absolute. I'm not going to judge it. If it's what I prefer or what I don't prefer, it's brought to this life. I don't want to be at battle with it. I know that suffering will come from that. And you can check from yourself if suffering comes from that or not. Again, the wanting the toaster to be a blender. The toaster's not a blender. It's a toaster. Wanting the other to act a certain way. Changes can happen, but they might not happen. I'm not going to put my happiness in that. I wanted to maybe wrap up towards another Ramana quote on everything flowing according to some sort of divine unfolding. And so Ramana said, divine will prevails at all times and under all circumstances. So it's not that sometimes God was here doing it, sometimes it wasn't. At all times and under all circumstances. He says individuals cannot act out of their own accord. That the divine is behind all of this. The toaster being a toaster and the blender being a blender. The one acting one way, another acting another way. The divine is behind all of it. He says individuals cannot act of their own accord. It's the divinity behind it. Recognize the force of the divine will and keep quiet. This is that peace that happens when I stop battling with it. Each and every one is looked after by God. Life taking care of life, not battling with it. Very good. So, just in closing, what we can take from today, recognizing the awareness, of course, behind everything, getting to know that nature of awareness more and more. And also in this, recognizing thoughts appearing and falling away, recognizing the power of thoughts to draw us in. And the more that that's recognized, the less sticky they become. The more the mind quietens, the more we act from intuition. Then also recognizing, keep saying recognizing, we're not going to believe something. We don't want to believe something. We want to check over and over and over until that belief in me being the doer falls away. Or it doesn't, whatever happens. But this is how the teaching does its work, is with a recognition of what is pointed to. And everybody has that potential. Check on that. And if you've been brought here to share in this teaching, you definitely have the opportunity to look into this and allow the teaching to do its work and allow life to meet one with that teaching there present in all of it, and this peace to be the foundation of a life as we move forward. That updated conditioning being that space of peace and calmness and wholeness and acceptance